Unveiling 3 sinister and spine-chilling true lighthouse tales of the haunted and cursed. The lighthouse loomed over the coastal town like a giant's grave marker, and its feral whispers beckoned Harris Street. Locals spoke in hushed tones about the keepers who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the fog that twisted like a serpent around its crumbling stones. Every story carried a chill, and every child carried a warning. Yet, for Sarah, the only voice that mattered was the sweet, mischievous tone of her son, Tommy. Her heart raced with a mix of love and dread as she prepared for their weekend adventure to the lighthouse, hoping to indulge his insatiable curiosity while keeping the shadows at bay. On that misty Saturday morning, the air was thick, it smelled like salt and fear. "Let us do this, buddy," Sarah said, forcing a smile, but inside, her heart drummed a frantic beat. The lighthouse's broken windows glinted, eerie and watchful. Entering its damp interior felt like stepping into a coffin. The walls whispered secrets, chilling, echoing cries that sent a shiver down her spine, but she tried to shake it off. "It's just imagination," she reassured herself. In the dust and gloom, Tommy's eyes widened, terror and thrill battling within them. "Mom! There are people in the glass!" he shrieked, pointing towards the fading shapes in the dirty panes. They looked like lost souls, their faces twisted, mouths agape in silent screams. "They want to warn us," he whispered, trembling. Sarah reached for him, her stomach dropping as shadows danced in her peripheral vision, intensifying the heavy gloom. "It's nothing, Tommy. Just stories." But then, glancing at the unsettling headlines clinging like shadows to the lighthouse's history, a string of disappearances and tragedies, her pulse quickened. Questions spiraled. "Just local gossip," said Mr. Hargrove, their neighbor, a friendly man but with a strange glint in his eye as he offered to help them. "No harm in having a chat with old friends," he chuckled awkwardly, staring out towards the lighthouse as if it were his long-lost lover. Something in his gaze sent a chill creeping up her spine. Was he just kind, or was there something darker lurking behind that warm smile? As twilight descended, the atmosphere shifted. The lighthouse south presence felt suffocatingly close, closing in on them, its stones rich with despair. "Let us go, Mom," Tommy pleaded, his tiny voice cracking, the undercurrent of fear rising like a tide. Just then, whispers drifted through the air, wrapping around them. "Flee." The call felt ancient, edged with malice. Anxiety coursed through Sarah. This was more than just folklore. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a jolt, Sarah understood the horrific truth. The keepers, lost in the shadows, were connected to the dark pull of the lighthouse. They hadn't perished, they were trapped, seeking freedom, vengeance. She cast a wary glance at Mr. Hargrove, who stood too close, his face twisted with a sinister smile. Panic surged through her as she clutched Tommy's hand, the atmosphere crackling like a lightning storm. Shadows swirled thicker, muting Tommy's cries as the spectral voices escalated, their pleas becoming a scream. Could she stand against the darkness that had taken so much? The door slammed shut behind them, and Sarah's heart sank. A cacophony of whispers filled the air, the past clawing desperately for escape. "Run, Mommy! Run!" Tommy's fragile voice pierced through the deepening chaos, but all they had were the cold stones and ominous shadows, choking them. The lighthouse towered. Above them, a monolith of dread, and dusk wrapped around their necks like a noose. Would they ever escape its cursed breath? Panic tightened its grip around Sarah's throat as the echoes of Tommy's plea faded into the oppressive silence. Her heart raced, and time seemed to stretch, each second laden with dread. She had to get out. The door was heavy, but she hurled herself against it, desperation fueling her strength as she and Tommy slammed their bodies against the barrier. The wood didn't budge. It felt as if the lighthouse itself was holding them captive, its stones whispering hissing secrets that skittered across the floor like a swarm of insects. "Mommy!" Tommy clutched her hand, his small fingers trembling, his eyes wide and glistening with terror. "Stay close, Tommy." "Just hold on." Her voice trailed off as the shadows began to hum, a deep resonance that felt bone-deep, vibrating through the floor and rising up her legs. The air thickened, saturated with something sinister. A chill swept through her, stealing her breath. Suddenly, a shriek echoed in the void, a sound almost human, but warped, distorted and filled with anguish. Sarah recoiled, instinctively pulling Tommy behind her. Her skin prickled as they sensed movement within the dark corners. Shapes flickered, bending at odd angles, merging into one another like oil on water. The glass panes seemed to pulse, the faces within twisting deeper into expressions of horror and desperation. "Mommy, make them stop." Tommy whimpered, pressing against her side. His trust was a sharp dagger in her heart, sharpening her resolve. She couldn't let fear consume them, they had to fight their way to freedom. "Come on, Tommy. We're getting out," she shouted, finding a flicker of courage in the depths of her fear. They darted towards the nearest wall, hoping to find a window, a crack to crawl through. Each step forward felt like wading through treacle. As they moved, whispers clung to them, tickling her ears with icy breath. "You belong with us." She shook her head, teeth clenched. "No." The sound erupted from her throat, raw and defiant. The faces in the glass twisted further, as though in protest, their spectral bodies writhing under her defiance. They rushed toward the spiral staircase, a winding path disappearing into the shadows above. With every step up, the air thickened like molasses, dragging them back. "Hurry!" she urged, pushing Tommy ahead. They needed to reach the top, where the light used to cut through the darkness. Would it guide them to safety or seal their fate? When they reached the landing, a figure emerged from the shadows, a dark silhouette against the battered beam of light. Mr. Hargrove, eyes glinting with madness, blocked their only escape. "You shouldn't have come here." "They're waiting." He smiled, but it was not a smile, it was a mask concealing malignant joy. "You're just like the others. Get away from us." Sarah's voice shook with fury, fear intertwining like a noose around her mind. She couldn't let him take Tommy. Never. Suddenly, the lighthouse shuddered, the walls moaning as if in agony. The whispers intensified, a chaotic storm of sound crashing against her. The ground trembled, fragments of the ancient structure splintering and crumbling around them. "We need to jump," she yelled, spotting a rickety window just above the staircase. In a flash, she grabbed Tommy, hustling him toward the opening. But as they moved, the figure of Mr. Hargrove melted back into shadow, his laughter echoing like thunder. "You cannot escape what you are." The warning hung heavy in the air as they launched themselves toward the window, hearts pounding against the oncoming darkness. The moment felt unreal, an instant suspended between freedom and the abyss. Would they leap into the unknown, or would the lighthouse claim them as it had so many before? "Tommy!" she screamed as they flew through the air, the ground rushing up to meet them, leaving only the heartbeat of the past echoing in the spaces behind them. And then, everything went black. Light washed over Sarah, blinding her as she crashed onto something solid. Instinctively, she curled around Tommy, shielding him with her body. They landed hard, the ground scraping against her skin, but the pain was distant, muffled beneath the roar of terror in her heart. Breathless, she opened her eyes slowly, adjusting to the sudden brightness. They were outside, sprawled on the rocky shoreline, the lighthouse looming above them like a dark sentinel. The sound of waves crashing against the jagged rocks filled the air, but it was not just the ocean she heard. It was something else, a whispering, relentless squall of voices carried on the wind. "Mommy?" Tommy's voice trembled next to her, still dazed and wide-eyed. "Yeah, baby, I'm here," Sarah panted, her instinct to shield him overriding any focus on her own panic. She pushed herself up, glancing at the lighthouse again, shivers coursing down her spine. Its windows were dark, but she could have sworn she saw shapes moving inside, flitting in and out of view as if beckoning her to return. "We have to," she started, but her words faded. The lighthouse loomed over them, a monstrous silhouette against the fading light, and dread settled in her gut like a stone. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching, waiting. The wind howled and pulled at her clothes, carrying with it the echo of Mr. Hargrove's laughter, a sound that twisted her insides. "You cannot escape what you are," it rattled in her mind, a sick, twisted refrain. Why couldn't she shake his words? What did he mean? With shaky legs, she turned Tommy towards the path leading away from the shore. But something in her stopped her. A memory flickered, a glimpse of something horrible in the lighthouse, something she couldn't put into words. Could they truly leave that place behind? Or was it part of them now? "Mommy, I don't want to go back there," Tommy whimpered, sensing her hesitation. "I know, sweetheart. We won tea," she said firmly, clutching his hand and pulling him along. Yet, deep down, doubt gnawed at her spirit. Would their escape be that simple? They moved quickly, the jagged rocks making every step a perilous trek. The air grew heavy, laden with salt and something dark like the echoes of voices from that cursed tower. As they reached the winding path that led away from the beach, the whispers swelled, intensifying into a cacophony, almost tangible, snatching at her heart. "Tommy, cover your ears," Sarah shouted, fighting the pull of the lighthouse. The urgency clawed at her. It was as if the very ground beneath them vibrated with the lighthouse's desire to reclaim them. She could feel the stone beneath her feet wanting to drag her back. "What do you want?" she screamed, voice reaching a fever pitch, desperation leaking into every syllable. "Come home with us," the voices wailed, haunting and sorrowful. Then, just like that, silence fell thick and suffocating. The sudden quiet was more terrifying than the cacophony. Sarah's heart raced, every beat heavy with foreboding. "I want to go home," Tommy shouted defiantly, pulling away slightly, his small frame trembling against the weight of the unknown. "But where's home?" Sarah said, her voice shaking. Questions rampaged through her mind. What if she couldn't protect him? What if the darkness invited them back in? Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye, and her heart dropped. From the corner of the lighthouse, a figure emerged, a shadow twisting out of the depths of darkness, enveloped in the fading light. "Help me," it rasped, and the sound sent a jolt of ice coursing through her veins. "Run!" She grabbed Tommy's hand again, the last remnants of resolve igniting a fire within her, but as they raced away, the ground shifted beneath them again, and she could feel the lighthouse calling to her, a siren's song of despair. Would they ever truly escape the horror that awaited them in the shadows, or was this just the beginning of something far more sinister? The moment they began running, Sarah's brain whirled. Each step sent shards of pain through her legs, but she pushed forward. Tommy's hand was warm in hers, an anchor in the terrifying storm surrounding them. But nothing seemed to drown out the whispers in the air, echoes of loss and longing that slithered into her ears, promising safety if only they would look back. "Stay close to me," she shouted, the urgency spilling from her lips. She could feel the lighthouse's breath on her neck, cold and creeping. With every stride, the air grew heavier, saturated with a malevolence that made her skin crawl. Fear poured into her veins, and her heart thundered with each labored breath. "Mommy! What's happening?" Tommy's voice cracked, and she could feel every ounce of his terror mirrored inside her own chest. "It's okay, it'll be okay," she cried, lying through her teeth. Panic surged anew, and Sarah dared not glance back. But an instinct tugged at her, a premonition that they weren't truly free. No, the shadows clung like phantoms to their heels, hungry and relentless. As they neared the edge of the path where it met the cliff's drop, a sudden gust swept past them, forcing Sarah to stumble. "Tommy!" She turned just in time to see him teeter on the edge. Her heart clenched tightly, and she lunged, snatching his arm just before he could plunge into the depths below. "Mommy!" he shrieked, breathless and terrified. "Don't let go." "I won T," she gasped, barely steadying herself. As she pulled him close, she felt the ground beneath her tremble and shift ominously. The lighthouse stood tall in the distance, dark and foreboding, but its grip seemed to extend, reaching for them like fingers curling around victims. "Help me," the voice echoed again, this time it was right behind them, chilling and filled with despair. "Please don't leave me." Every fiber in Sarah's body screamed to run, yet the sound pierced her heart. She spun, eyes wide, scanning the rocky path. For a dreadful moment, she thought she might see someone emerge from the shadows. But nothing remained but the cold jolt of her pulse, hammering in her ears. Was it a trick of her mind? Or was it real? "Mommy?" Tommy whimpered, pulling back slightly. He sensed her hesitation, and it terrified her to know that he might feel the same thing she did, the pull of something dark and terrible lurking in the lighthouse's depths. "Tommy, listen to me. We have to keep moving." She steeled her voice, but it sounded hollow. They turned back towards the cliff, frantically searching for a way to move away from that darkness. Then, like a shadow moving out of the corner of her eye, something shifted near the lighthouse. At first, it seemed just a flicker, but then, unrelenting, it took form, an indistinct figure standing at the entrance, as if waiting. "Come home," it called again, and this time, the words wrapped around Sarah's throat like a noose. Panic surged anew. "I can't!" she screamed, pulling Tommy tighter against her side as anger ignited within her. "I won T." But even as the words left her lips, doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if the figure was someone they could help? What if that person was trapped? The urge tugged at her heart like a dark thread weaving through her mind. "Mommy, please." Tommy's plea cut through the storm of her thoughts. "I don't want to go back." "Me neither." She shook her head fiercely. Her eyes were drawn back to the shadow, now growing, expanding. The figure was stepping closer, its features morphing in the twilight. Without warning, the ground shuddered violently, and the whispers renewed, now frantic, pleading. "You cannot leave. You belong with us." The realization hit hard. There was more to this than just escape. No matter how fast they ran, the dark presence clung to their shadows. The lighthouse wasn't just a place, it was a cruel fate, insatiable and unrelenting. "Mommy?" Tommy's voice was barely a whisper now, filled with dread that dripped like poison. With quickening desperation, Sarah frantically scanned the cliff and pointed toward an opening in the rocks ahead. "There. We can try to get through." Together, they dashed toward the small crevice, adrenaline coursing through their veins. But just as they reached it, she felt something grab her ankle, icy fingers pulling her back. Sarah's heart froze. "Tommy! Go!" she screamed, and he hesitated, eyes wide with fear. But as she kicked free, her heart raced. How could she protect him when the darkness was already closing in? The lighthouse seemed to thrum with malevolent energy now, the whispers morphing into piercing howls. "Sarah!" Tommy's cry was sharp and full of anguish. In that moment, as she looked back to find him, the world around her seemed to blur. The burning question seared in her thoughts: how far could she go to save him before falling into the abyss herself? Then it happened, a realization as stark as the tower's shadow stretching toward them. They were not alone. The darkness was hungry, and it wouldn't stop until it had taken everything. Sarah. What would she choose? And with that, they slipped deeper into the unknown. The air was thick with a scent of brine and decay as they stumbled through the narrow crevice, heartbeats racing in frantic rhythm. The shadows clung to them like a wet shroud, dragging their very souls toward despair. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps, her body screaming for respite as panic coursed through her veins. "Mommy, where are we?" Tommy's voice trembled, laced with a fear too profound for a child's heart. "We're safe, we're finding a way out," she promised, but the words felt like ashes on her tongue. The darkness whispered around them, twisting thoughts and piercing through the newly buried hope. As they emerged into a hollow of rock, the oppressive weight of silence enveloped them. The flickering light from the lighthouse outside picked at their shadows, playfully flickering away the thin walls of reality. Sarah turned, every nerve in her body on alert. "We need to keep moving. Keep your eyes on me. Mommy, can we just stop? I'm so tired." The sound of his small voice pierced through the fog of terror. She glanced at him, beleaguered and pale, his big eyes wide with fear. Her heart ached for him. But the lighthouse was a predator, waiting, sniffing the air for weakness. "No time for that, babe." She forced her voice to steady. "We have to find another way. It'll be over soon, I promise." But as they ventured further, a chill swept through the hollow, making her shiver. The whispers returned, curling around her mind with soft caresses of dread. "Help us break free, Mommy." Tommy tugged at her sleeve, fear etched deeply in his face. "I don't like this place." "I know, honey, I know." But as their footsteps echoed in the cavern, a sudden sound broke the uneasy peace, a low, echoing moan that reverberated off the walls. "What was that?" Tommy whimpered. "Just the wind," she lied, clutching his hand tightly. But her heart raced. The darkness manipulated her senses, taunting her with its secrets. They pressed on, the tunnel twisting like a serpent, and at each turn, she could feel something lurking deeper within, watching, waiting. A faint flicker caught her eye, leading them into a larger chamber. The walls began to pulse with an unearthly glow, illuminating a multitude of frail shapes huddled on the ground. Are there people?" Tommy asked, stepping forward, but Sarah yanked him back even as a sickening dread pooled in her stomach. "Wait!" she hissed. The creatures lifted their heads, and she stumbled back, horror blooming within her. These were not people, these were shadows formed in the shape of humans. Pale faces twisted in sorrow, mouths far too wide as they reached out with bony fingers. Their hollow eyes stared straight through Sarah, filled with a desperate longing. "Please help us to the light," they murmured, voices like a choir of the damned, layered with anguish and regret. "Mommy!" Tommy screamed, trying to pull away. "No! Don't look at them!" Sarah shouted, fighting the urge to comfort those nightmarish figures. They weren't lost spirits waiting for salvation, they were a snare, luring them closer to join their ranks. But the whispers grew louder, and her resolve wavered. "We want to go home, don't leave us." The atmosphere thickened with palpable despair, and shadows from the figures stretched toward Tommy. Sarah felt a dire urge to respond, to reach out, to listen. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and the moaning intensified. A looming figure sprang from the darkness of the chamber, emerging like a nightmare-made flesh, a silhouette framed by the ghostly light. It towered over them, its presence overwhelming, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "Turn back!" it bellowed, voice like thunder, rattling her bones. "You cannot escape what is yours. Run!" she screamed, yanking Tommy as they bolted toward the exit, raw panic clawing at her throat. The shadows from the figures chased after them, desperate, crying out as if the loss of their chance was a knife twisting in the dark, but the lighthouse stood resolute at the chamber's exit, its dark doorway absorbing light and reason. "No escape. Mommy, I'm scared!" Tommy cried, anguish spilling from his eyes. "Keep running," she urged, but she felt the weight of the shadows grow heavier, aching to consume. As they closed in on the exit, a chilling scream erupted behind them, a wild cacophony of loss and rage, palpable and horrifying. "You belong to us." The darkness surged forward, hungry for their fear, clawing at their heels as they reached the looming doorway. Then suddenly, a pair of cold hands grasped Sarah's waist, jerking her back before she could cross the threshold. "No!" she screamed, terror building in a vicious wave, her heart hammering in her chest. Tommy reached for her, but that dread-filled darkness soaked through her skin, pulling her into its sorrowful depth, dragging her toward an inevitable fate. She could feel her body wavering between dimensions, the lighthouse's grip tightening. But amidst the chaos, a new realization dawned. What if the truth of the figures was more than mere longing? What if they were warning her of their own torment? As she looked desperately back at Tommy, she realized that every choice led her closer to a revelation, but what would that truth cost? And that choice loomed behind her, darker than the shadows themselves. Sarah felt the icy grip around her waist tighten, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The whispers swirled in her mind, growing louder, almost drowning out her heartbeat. Join us, be one with the dark, let go of her. Tommy's voice rang out, fear threading through his words as he scrambled toward her, his little hands reaching out. Mommy, please. The cold hands pulled harder, twisting her body just enough to see the nightmarish figure looming behind her. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light, piercing through the shadows that danced in the flickering luminescence of the chamber. The sight made her stomach churn. The face was a distorted parody of humanity, every feature exaggerated in grotesque delight. Turn away, child. The figure boomed, its voice like grinding stones, unintelligible yet commanding. No! Sarah cried, thrashing against the grip, her mind racing. She couldn't let this thing take her, not while Tommy was so close. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she flipped around, breaking free from the darkness momentarily. But the shadows lashed out, snapping back at her like 1,000 tenacious vines, pulling her back toward that dreadful figure. Mommy! Tommy screamed again, his voice trembling, tears carving paths down his dirt-streaked cheeks as he stood frozen, stricken by horror. The sight of Tommy, so vulnerable, ignited a feral instinct within Sarah. With every ounce of strength, she fought against the unseen force. No! We're getting out of here. She lunged for Tommy, pulling him to her in a tight embrace. A fierce crack split the air, and the chamber seemed to shift. The whispers of the shadows turned into howls of fury, filling the space with an unbearable cacophony. A wave of energy surged through the darkness, vibrating against their skin, threatening to tear them apart. Run! Sarah screamed, her voice raw. She shoved Tommy toward the exit, urging him to go. You have to run. You need to get to the light. No! He hesitated, his small form quaking, stuck between wanting to obey and the overwhelming pull of terror behind them. I can't leave you. Her heart twisted as panic coursed between them, but she knew they were fighting to escape a snare that would only tighten. Do it. I'll find you. Just go. With visible anguish, Tommy turned and sprinted toward the ominous doorway, each step a leap of faith into the unknown. Sarah felt a sharp pang of loss, but the looming figure behind them was now restless, its limbs fidgeting, the shadows clawing impatiently. Mommy! Tommy's voice echoed, trembling in the chilled air, piercing through the chaos. Then, as if sensing a shift, the shadows lunged. A furious whirlwind of darkness surged past her, consuming whatever remained of hope and light. She stumbled, feeling the sinister force encircle her, grasping at her limbs with icy fingers, drowning her in anguish. No! The command was simple, visceral, raw, filled with the essence of all her fears. She fought against that pull, twisting and tearing her body free. In that moment, clarity flooded her mind. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for truth and light against the engulfing dark. Steeling herself, Sarah plunged deeper into the pulsating shadows, through the walls of despair, and desperately sought out Tommy's retreating form. Tommy! She cried, her voice mingling with the howl of lost souls, trying to reach him through the chaos. Suddenly, she felt her body being pulled toward the light. The flicker at the end of the tunnel was now a beacon, alive and vibrant, fighting against the eternal night. Keep running! She urged, her voice now firm as she forced her legs to move faster, but the shadows betrayed her, charging, relentless. She was a mere shell, a flickering flame against the storm, yet something inside her wanted to scream, to claw her way to the truth that awaited. Leave or be taken. The distorted face roared, anger rippling through the air. With the final surge of her strength, Sarah took a step forward, ready to plunge into whatever awaited her beyond the darkness. But as she reached for the light, the shadows reached back, caught in a violent dance of power and yearning, and then everything went black. Darkness consumed her entire being, an echo of the last call she could hear, "Mommy." When the echoes faded, an eerie silence fell, wrapping around Sarah and plunging her into an unending void. The emptiness felt consuming, haunting. What twisted revelations lay in wait as she faced whatever hell this lighthouse had become? In the suffocating silence, a new sound emerged, a soft, desperate sob. Sarah's heart raced anew. Was it Tommy? Or was the heart-wrenching cry another trick of the shadows? As that chilling realization sank in, uncertainty gripped her once more, as the lighthouse pulsed around her, awaiting her next choice. What would she unravel if she stepped further into this darkness? Sarah's heart thudded in her chest, each beat echoing in the oppressive silence. The sobbing grew louder, a fragile sound that snaked through the darkness, wrapping around her like a rope. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet the sound pulled her closer, a magnetic force drawing her deeper into the abyss. "Tommy?" she whispered, her voice trembling, barely more than a breath. The shadows shifted around her, swirling as though alive, twisting and curling in mockery. She felt their eyes, unseen yet heavy, watching, waiting. In this stifling darkness, every sound felt amplified. The creaks and groans of the lighthouse rattled through her bones like distant thunder, whispering secrets that clawed at her sanity. "Mommy!" The cry again, this time more determined, more urgent. It was real. It had to be. Each step forward flickered with hesitation, but she steadied herself, pressing deeper into the shadows. She reached out, her fingers trembling, brushing against the cold, slick wall of the lighthouse. A chill skated up her spine. What had she stepped into? "Tommy!" she called, her voice stronger now, cutting through the spectral silence. The darkness felt thick, like a viscous fluid surrounding her, smothering her breaths, but she couldn't waver. "I'm coming. Stay close." Suddenly, an unexpected gust of wind whipped through the space, carrying the echoes of laughter, sinister and mocking. It twisted in her ears, sending a new wave of dread coursing through her veins. She fought against it, clenching her fists to keep herself anchored to her goal. But the laughter was relentless, morphing into fragmented whispers. "Join us," they hissed. "The light is gone." Her pulse quickened as a cold sensation clutched her heart. Was it true? Was the light really extinguished forever? The thought clawed at her, squeezing her throat, almost choking her. "Mommy!" Hope, a flicker, a spark. That was Tommy's voice. She sprinted forward, propelled by that desperate call. Each step felt like running through heavy muck, her legs weighted down by forces unseen. She could see a faint shimmer ahead, a glimmer that could be hope or a cruel mirage. "Tommy! I'm almost there." Her voice broke through the whispers, rising above the turmoil. "Help me!" came his muffled voice from somewhere above, echoing downward, the urgency twisting inside her like a knife. The lighthouse's soul trembled around her as if responding to her call. Without warning, the ground quaked beneath her. Dust and debris rained down, making her gasp. Shadows danced wildly, morphing, shifting like frenzied animals. She stumbled but caught herself, eyes wide. "Get out!" The towering figure roared from the depths, its voice booming like rolling thunder. "You seek what is not meant for you." That voice, it was power encased in malice, heavy like a chain pulling her back. But the sobbing continued, frantic notes threading through her heart, urging her not to yield. "Tommy! I want to let them take you." Just then, the shimmer broke into a barrage of light, slicing through the darkness like a knife. It hurt to look at, blinding her momentarily. But within that brilliance, she swore she saw Tommy, a flash of his face, wide-eyed, pleading, surrounded by swirling shadows. "Mommy!" he cried again, driving her forward into the blinding light, into the core of turmoil, but the shadows lashed out, the darkness reeling in fury, a whirlpool dragging her back, deep into their angry embrace. She felt herself slipping, the brightness flickering like a dying flame as the shadows attempted to reclaim their prize. I want to let go. But would it be enough? As she reached for Tommy's fading form, she felt a chilling grasp encircle her ankle. Panic surged, a primal scream welling up from the depths. The chamber of the lighthouse pulsed ominously, and the howls of the shadows rose in defiance. There was no guarantee that reaching him would erase the darkness, but she could not abandon him. Not now. Not ever. With a final, desperate lunge, she screamed, "Together!" But before their hands could meet, the air surged, and the light extinguished. An instant, darkness swallowed her whole, the last remnants of hope fading like distant stars smothered by the night. And then silence. As she floated in the endless void, her mind racing, whispers resumed, taunting her with lost promises. Shadows swirled around her, wrapping her tightly in veils of despair. What would happen if she chose to stand against the dark? What revelations awaited her in the heart of this darkness? Her resolve questioned, she searched within. A flicker, deep inside a spark of defiance, making sense of insanity, Sarah prepared for the reckoning. This wasn't finished yet. The horrors of the lighthouse thrummed around her like a heartbeat, waiting, pulsing. What truth would be awakened in the depths of her soul, where shadows and light collided head-on? A chilling stillness engulfed her, the whispers morphing into a cacophony of sorrow. Echoes of lost souls swirled, a mournful song that reverberated in her mind. Was it despair they sung, or was it the promise of something darker? Sarah felt an invisible weight pressing down on her, each whispered note pulling her further into the void. Fingers of dread curled around her throat, choking her breath. She struggled, muscles tense, against the oppressive nothingness. What had she done to deserve this spiraling descent? Was Tommy truly lost? The shadows danced, flickering around her like flames, taunting her with their movement. They formed figures, gleaming eyes stared back, accusing and sorrowful. Fear twisted in her gut, coiling tighter. The laughter returned, this time layered with cries of anguish. A symphony of despair. "Your son," a voice echoed, soft yet dripping with malice. "He is not yours anymore." "No." The sound erupted from her lips, raw and fierce as she pushed against the current. "You can't have him." But their laughter deepened, a chorus of the damned, echoing against her pounding heart. "You think you can save him? You are walking into the light promised for him, but he's already theirs." The despair wrapped around her like chains, dragging her down into the choking depths. With every breath, her senses sharpened, the pain clawing at her, despair becoming both torment and clarity. She fought a wave of hopelessness. She would not succumb. Suddenly, she recalled the flicker of defiance, the small spark that guided her through the shadows. With a surge of will, Sarah envisioned Tommy's face, innocent eyes filled with trust. Tommy. That undeniable love pushed back against the darkness. Was she a mother or a lost soul? In that moment, she refused to be defined by fear. "Tommy!" she cried, voice unwavering, cutting through the fog. "I'm coming for you. I will find you." The shadows paused, a flicker of uncertainty skimming through them. She felt the thick haze around her shift, reeling as if startled by her boldness. Taking a deep breath, she called again, "We're stronger together." A sudden flash tore through the darkness, illuminating her surroundings. She felt the icy grip around her ankles release, confusion pulsing outwards like ripples. Somehow, she was gaining ground. Figures emerged from the swirling blackness, twisted faces, but in the hazy light, they appeared less threatening, more sorrowful. "You should not have come," one murmured, its voice breaking like glass. "It will not end well." "Shut up." She spat back, fighting through the shadows. She couldn't falter. Tommy needed her. Each step drew her closer, her heartbeat sinking with the pulsing light. As the light brightened, a path unfolded, scattered with faint images of laughter and innocence, memories of Tommy playing in sunlight, colors bursting with life. She knew then what she had to do. "Stay with me, Tommy," she shouted, pushing forward, the light illuminating her path. "Stay with me." But the shadows responded in kind, more viscous, swirling like dark smoke, encircling her like predators. You cannot choose the light when darkness calls. In that final moment, she felt an immense force collide with her, as if the very fabric of the lighthouse was fracturing. Shimmers morphed around her, reality folding in on itself. Her vision turned blurry, and with it, her heart sank. She was not alone in this abyss. The shadows were reaching, stretching toward her while grasping at the edges of her mind. Tommy. The scream wasn't just for him, it was for herself, for her strength, for courage in the face of despair. But as the tendrils of darkness twisted around her once more, dragging her back towards the void, doubt crept in. What if this time she couldn't escape? Suddenly, a blinding flash surged towards her. What felt like the breath of life infused with raw energy splashed against her skin. It was the lighthouse itself, yearning for the light, searching for its own redemption. "Together!" she shouted, grasping for the warmth inside her as she beckoned the light. "Together!" But as moments hung suspended, the darkness writhed, shifting against her pleas, ever hungry to reclaim its prize. Around her, the shadows whispered again, now insistent, sharp, "The lighthouse feeds on the lost." Would she become one of them? In that instant, Sarah felt the faint tug of Tommy's hand against her own. Could she defy the call of the depths? As darkness tightened its grip, she felt more than fear, she felt a renewed hope coiling in her heart. But would that hope be enough to break the cycle? What truth lay waiting in the depths of the lighthouse, and what would it take for her to survive the rising tide of shadows? She surged forward, the light warming her cheeks, igniting a fire within her that pulsed against the shadows. Yet, they pressed closer, glistening with malevolence, their icy fingers seeking to extinguish her flame. "Tommy!" she cried once more, desperation mingling with fierce determination. The walls of the lighthouse echoed with her voice, a desperate beacon in the oppressive dark. "I'm coming." The shadows writhed, as if her words were an incantation turning them restless. A beastly howl cut through like glass shattering, resonating against the stones. "You belong to the dark now," one shadow hissed, its form stretching grotesquely, eyes glowing with a hunger that made her skin crawl. "You'll never leave." But the warmth inside her burned brighter, each heartbeat igniting another spark. She pushed through the weight of despair, remembering that tender smile, the way Tommy's laughter danced through the air like sunlight. With every step, vivid memories glimmered before her, chasing butterflies in the garden, splashing in puddles during spring rains, sitting together in the living room, building fortresses made of blankets. Reality flickered like a candle's flame, vying against the tide of darkness. "Not today," she hissed through gritted teeth, pulling strength from the images. "I want to let you take him." She extended her hand toward the light pulsing at the heart of the lighthouse. The shadows recoiled as if struck, hissing through clenched teeth. "She's stronger than we thought. It can't be." An eerie silence filled the space, abruptly slicing through the cacophony of conflict. Sarah felt her body quake as power surged through her veins, answering her call to the light. She could feel Tommy's presence grazing at the edges of her consciousness, a fragile thread connecting their lives. The moment froze, and for a fleeting heartbeat, she saw it, the silhouette of Tommy, standing between the shadows. His form flickered like a fragile flame seeking refuge as whispers clawed at him, pulling him back into the depths. "Mom!" His voice was small, an echo of laughter now steeped in fear, desperate and pleading. "Hold on." Her heart raced, and she strained against the suffocating darkness, her spirit lifting. As she surged forward, she felt the fabric of the air shift. It felt as if she was being pulled, stretched between hope and dread. With one final push, she threw herself into the radiant glow, the lighthouse shimmering as it absorbed her desperation. "Together!" she shouted, feeling Tommy's own laughter fold back into her. The light engulfed her, swathes of warmth filling her lungs, pushing back against the cold grasp of despair. For a heartbeat, she could see Tommy smiles back, his fragile figure shimmering, golden like sunlight. But then, the darkness retaliated. It lunged at the light, a whirlwind of shadows shrieking as they clawed at the brilliance. "We want to let you in. You can't have this." The impact sent shockwaves through Sarah, splitting her vision between light and shadow. Dread shot through her veins as she felt the pull of darkness trying to seize her heart. "Fight, Tommy! Fight!" she yelled, glancing at the fading image of her son as he struggled against the black crowd surging around him. The shadows pulled at her skin like thorny vines, sharp and deliberate, gnashing teeth and thrusting accusing fingers. "His life belongs to us," they snarled, laughter twisting in malicious delight. Using every ounce of strength, she grasped the light. "You don't own him. He's mine." The lighthouse groaned in response, cracks spidering across its stones, a haunting scream echoing through every fissure. A mantle of light erupted, scattering the shadows in electric waves. But as the corners of the lighthouse brightened, clarity flickered momentarily. What would it cost her to rescue Tommy? The walls shook as foreboding rumblings echoed around them. "Mom! Help!" His voice was undone by terror, each syllable twisting like a knife lodged in her heart. With her own life hanging in the balance, Sarah felt a chilling truth crystallizing in her mind. The light flickered uncertainly, held at bay by the shadows swirling misfortune around her. Would the sacrifice bring salvation or doom them both? As the shadows surged with renewed potency, she stood teetering on the brink, torn between hope and despair. Was love enough to overcome the darkness, or would she, too, be forever chained to the lighthouse, submerged in its wailing depths? What price would she have to pay to save her son? Time hung heavy, blurred by echoes of laughter and cries as Sarah faced the turbulent fate awaiting them both. The darkness rattled and shifted, a living presence that hungrily watched Sarah and Tommy. Fear clawed at Sarah's throat, but she pressed onward, heart pounding, its rhythm urging her fought against the shadows clustering around her feet. Gazing into the heart of the light, something primal flickered in her soul. "Together!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the veil of despair. She felt it a warm surge from the core of the lighthouse. It nodded to her instinctual plea, the radiance pulsing brighter in response to her heart's cry. The shadows roared, an angry collective howl that reverberated against her bones. "You cannot take him!" they proclaimed, voices harmonizing in a cackling chorus steeped in malice. But the light was not mere illumination, it was life, hope, everything that the shadows sought to extinguish. As Sarah reached toward the luminous glow, the warmth wrapped around her fingers, igniting her spirit like a flame flickering in the darkest night. She could see Tommy clearer now, his small silhouette wavering but adamant, glowing like a beacon despite the darkness circling him. "Mommy! Help me!" Tommy's urgent plea pierced through the tumult, each word a promise of connection and shared strength. A fierce determination surged through Sarah. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." She felt the shadows tighten, constricting like a vice, but there was no turning back now. She drew strength from every moment they had shared, every laugh, every silly story under the stars. These memories were weapons forged in love, piercing armor of despair. "Let him go!" she roared, summoning every ounce of energy, every spark of light within her. The ground quaked as she took a bold step forward, her heart driving the momentum, the lighthouse vibrating with her resolve. In that instant, the shadows recoiled as if struck. "Strength cannot steal what is already theirs," they hissed, but the light answered back. The whispers screeched, warping into a cacophony of anguished cries when Sarah surged through the pain of separation. "Tommy!" Their eyes locked, and despite the chaos swirling around them, that connection anchored her spirit. "Mommy! Please help!" Tommy's cries echoed as he fought against the shadows wrapping around him like a cloak, pulling, dragging him back. "No!" she shrieked, lunging forward. The spectral hands reached, grasping, yearning, but her love surged forth, pushing the shadows aside. "I choose love. I will not sacrifice you to their darkness." Energy burst within her, expanding, filling the hollowed remnants of despair. The lighthouse shook angrily, fissures sprawling across its facade, light glaring like a roiling star. She could see the anguish of lost souls reflected in the shadows, voices merging into a desperate harmony. "Join us, stay with us." Fury lit within her, a flame fierce and bright. "You are just whispers of the past." With every step she took toward the blinding light, the shadows flared, pulsing like dark smoke, desperate and confused. "Tommy! I'm taking you home!" she shouted, their souls shimmering in tandem, a thread of hope in the midst of despair. "Mom!" Tommy gasped, his small fist struggling against the entangling light, but there was strength in their connection. With one final, united push, Sarah reached out, stretching her arm to grasp Tommy's. Together. Their hands clasped, a jolt of energy crackled through their bond, a brilliant surge igniting against the encroaching shadows. In a dazzling explosion of light, the shadows shrieked, imploding against the brightness, disintegrating beneath their will, and with that burst of love, the barrier shattered like fragile glass. A rush of fresh air enveloped them as they were thrown free from the oppressive grip of the lighthouse, landing on the rocky beach outside. The salty wind bit at their skin, the sea roared triumphantly in the distance as the lighthouse crumbled behind them, screams fading into echoes. Breathless, Sarah clutched Tommy to her chest, tears mingling with the saltwater on her cheeks. They were free. They were safe. "Mommy?" Tommy said, both bewildered and relieved, staring wide-eyed at the lighthouse collapsing into itself, shadows dissipating into the open sky. "I'm right here, my love." Sarah's heart swelled as she kissed his forehead. They had faced darkness head-on, and the bond they shared had prevailed. As Tommy leaned against her, the clouds shifted above, the sun breaking free from the oppressive gloom. For the first time since entering, they could finally breathe, at least for now. "Let us go home," she whispered, knowing the shadows were no longer behind them, but promising to secure the light forward. They retreated away from the ruins, the salty ocean air beckoning them to safety. Yet, in the depths of their hearts, the memory of the lighthouse lingered, a reminder that love could conquer even the deepest darkness if faced together. And so, arm in arm, they let the waves wash away their fears, stepping toward a future illuminated by hope. This story is a testament to the enduring power of love, and the light that can pierce through the darkest of shadows. Now, if you made it this far, you need to subscribe immediately. Don't miss exclusive stories like this that could change your life forever. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling conclusion. Your support is what keeps this adventure alive.